I give the CIA a total credit for sponsoring and initiating the entire consciousness movement, counterculture events of the 1960s.
All right. Everybody in here? Everyone strapped in, going? Everyone doing good? Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another Rise to Liberty. Today we are going to be looking at part 3 of my false memory syndrome expose thread. There is a lot to get to. At first, I was really kind of upset with myself in the way that I decided to organize the thread or build the thread, because it abruptly ends and then takes a hard right turn to an entirely separate time, an entirely separate person, story, and everything. But it actually works out, and I remembered why I did why I did things that way. So, nonetheless, we are going to do just a quick review of what we looked at last time, or actually not last time, because the last episode was Jonestown, a bonus episode. Make sure and go check that out. But I am going to do just a quick rundown of part 2, the parts that are going to be relevant for today. So before we get into this, the last thing I've got to say is just that if at any point you're watching this and you're kind of wondering why it doesn't seem like it's flowing, I promise you it does. I built this in a very particular way, and like I said, I even screwed myself up on it, but it builds it up in the most beautiful way possible. So with that in mind, let's get into this. So this is from part 2 of the thread. Dr. Margaret Singer, a retired Berkeley PhD, studied repudiated prisoners of war. So at the time, let's see, 1952 to 1958, the end of the Korean War. This would have been at Walter Reed Medical Center at the time. She would have been with Jay Lifton, Dr. Jay Lifton, and of course, everyone's favorite doctor, Jolly West. By the way, I was thinking about Jolly West. That is about the most scary person I can possibly think of. And I'll tell you why real quick. Because when you watch anything of his, he's a normal person. He's a normal person that does these terrible things. And I can't think of anything scarier, that somebody who can do such terrible things can just go home after a day's work and, kiss his wife on the lips and just be like, well, it was a tough day at work, honey, but they were just doing the most reprehensible, horrific human rights abuses. And that's just so terrifying to me. So I personally think that the Jolly name, while it is accurate, it is also very terrifying. So, Dr. Margaret Singer, retired Berkeley PhD, really kicked off her career at the Walter Reed Medical Center with Jolly West, Jay Lifton, and a bunch of other people, actually, but nobody that's going to matter for this. So basically what happened is that when we had defectors, the U.S. military had soldiers that defected. They called them POWs, but they weren't really. They did put out some press releases admitting that the U.S. had been dropping biological and chemical warfare munitions. And of course, that was illegal by the Geneva Convention. But since when does the United States follow even their own rules? They don't. So it is even still highly contested today if we did. I believe we did. I don't I don't know why anyone would believe that we didn't. There is plenty of evidence if you do want to find it. So, other than that, of course, the U.S. officials would come out and say, well, obviously something happened. They were POWs, they were tortured. Well, this is actually the very beginning of the use of terms like brainwashing. Up until this point, it was not in our lexicon. You cannot find it anywhere. It's just not a thing. The first ever use of it was actually in the Miami Herald, in a newspaper, oddly enough. A spook journalist, a really good journalist, but he also had ties, from his former career as a spook. Go figure. And so he launches the use of the word brainwashing, and it has been here ever since. Really interesting. Let's see here. So, real quick, if you search her, you find an accomplished woman who contributed to the understanding of cults, which is true. All of these people, even Jolly West, and they are so cartoonishly evil. But once again, they are just normal people. And even evil people aren't evil 100% of the time. And so, I mean, even some of the people that I just despise the most that is involved with pushing this lie of false memory have contributed some good things. And I can't deny that. It's just, I believe that the bad that they have done far outweighs any positives that they could have contributed. Which is why I feel the need to repeat this story that's been repeated by others. And I'm going to keep repeating it. It's just, it's got to happen until this is taken care of. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Thanks for showing up, guys. It's always fun to have friends in the chat. Okay, so let's get into it. Just slowly but surely. There's a lot to go over. So, as mentioned above, she studied returning soldiers from the Korean War, soldiers allegedly subjected to mind control by the Soviets, Chinese, North Korean. Why does this matter? This was justification used by Alan Dulles on April 13th, 1953, to begin the MK project, at least officially. If you know anything about MK you actually know that we were already studying these things well before this, under Project Bluebird and then Artichoke. However, it was April 13th, 1953, so just a couple of days ago, we did just pass the 72nd anniversary of MK at least the official launch by Alan Dulles, that sick bastard. I was actually trying to get a bunch of content ready to come out, but I'm actually going to do something better. I'm still coming out with MK content specific to the 72nd anniversary, but it's going to be much better this way. So keep an eye out for that. Anyway, so I find it interesting because we were using bombs. We were using biological and chemical weapons. And of course, our government lies to the citizens like that never happens. And on top of that, the only logical excuse for them is, oh, it was the Russians, which sounds exactly like today. Or it was the Chinese. It was the Chi-Coms. It's the same broken record over and over again. And you know what? It still works. It still fucking works, and I don't get it. However, this is the excuse used. Supposedly, what these countries, China, North Korea, Russia, what they all had on us was the ability to create a Manchurian candidate, which that's what we were doing. They were actually behind us in research. But this was the excuse they used. And then the public just didn't hear anything about it at all. Now, as far as what happened at Walter Reed Medical Center, I've still been trying to dig on that. I don't know if there are any records. I've heard that there are. I don't know how detailed they would be, because I can't imagine that they would want any records remaining, considering what is alleged to have happened. And it is alleged that instead of, treating the returning POWs, that once they did reach Walter Reed Medical Center, they themselves actually became victims of our own mind control and behavior modification programs. And it stands to reason. I can't think of a logical or reasonable argument as to why that wouldn't have happened. They just pissed off the largest, most powerful government in the world. And now they're having to cover up this huge mess about, doing, something really terrible with the biological and chemical weapons. So it's huge pain in the ass, because these guys wanted to tell the truth. That's going to piss off daddy government or big brother, whoever it is. And so it makes sense to me that by the time these POWs got back and they were sitting across from somebody like Jolly West or Margaret Singer, I just can imagine them sitting down and just opening up with one of those stupid sentences that any sort of official might. I'm not here to be an enemy. I'm here to be a friend. Here to open up a dialogue. It's like, oh God, just kill me. Don't put me through whatever you're about to, because it's going to be bad. So this is an incredibly pivotal moment, even though, yes, we were already experimenting. This is one of those moments where it's just it's one of the moments that you have to put on the graph, just for sake of keeping everything organized and keeping yourself sane. But ever since this point, Margaret Singer and Jolly West were virtually they were inseparable throughout the rest of their careers, which I found incredibly interesting. Never saw anything that would make me assume that it was anything more than professional, just like through the body language or pictures together or anything. I don't see that being a thing, but they definitely had a working relationship that lasted the rest of their lives until both of them passed away. And I just find it really interesting that it starts at Walter Reed, and then they themselves virtually start the anti-cult movement, the big movement against Scientology, which that's pretty cool. But I don't know exactly how legitimate that was, what kind of deals were going on behind the scenes. I don't know. But on the surface level, it sounds great because I'm all for it. But they never left each other's side. And in fact, I was just watching William Ramsey's show earlier as in yesterday. And he had put up a interview he had done with somebody, I can't remember, Joe somebody, works in the anti-cult movement, and he had actually met Jolly West, spent time with him at his home, and had some interesting things to say about him. Of course, it's the other side of things, not this monster that we typically think of any of the researchers or any of the people who are interested in this subject, we typically only see them as that. But this man had actually met him, stood in his home, had Jolly West's wife actually feed him dinner. So he has a whole different perspective. But even he himself mentioned in the few stories that he told about being with Jolly at his home, there were one or two of the stories that involved Margaret Singer. And mind you, this was before Singer, I believe she died of pneumonia, and Jolly West actually took himself out, which I find interesting. His son wrote a book about it. I've always wanted to read it. So if anyone actually, if anyone's read it, let me know if it's worth it to buy. I mean, I think it's only like $12, but can you imagine having that man as a father? No. Let's see here. Okay, before I get too distracted, the point that I was trying to make is that this is where they start building their codependent careers, I guess. And they do spend a little time away, but the reason it's important to point out how close they were is because there's a lot of people who like to come in and point to Margaret Singer and be like, oh, she wasn't like the rest of them. Well, that's not exactly true. Maybe she's not known for it. Maybe it's not publicly known. But she was best friends, at least best work friends, with Jolly West, with a guy who is known for doing these things. And from more of the research that I've done, everything points to him not feeling bad about any of it. There was a note from his secretary out of his archive over at UCLA or wherever the hell they have it, and there was something about how she was shocked that he didn't react to some sort of news or something. It was just like a note left by a secretary, non-consequential, but it was just interesting, her comment on his lack of reaction. But nonetheless, these two were there thick and thin until the end. So that's pretty much what we needed to touch on. Let's see here. So, sorry, I have so many tabs open. I don't want to pull up the wrong one. Here we go. So, this is what I wanted to get to today. Part 3, the foundation. Dr. Margaret Singer, an expert in mind control, brainwashing, cults, seemed to keep finding herself in the most high-profile cases involving these topics. The woman who interviewed the Korean War soldiers used as justification for MKUltra just keeps showing up. And we're starting off this part of the thread with her obituary out of the LA Times. Margaret Singer, 82, expert on brainwashing cults, testified at 76 trial of Patricia Hearst. In fact, it reminds me I have a picture to go along with the Patty Hearst thing. Anyways, let's see. So, Margaret Singer, one of the world's leading experts on cults and brainwashing, who served as an expert witness in numerous high-profile court cases, including testifying for the defense in the 1976 bank robbery trial of kidnapped newspaper heiress Patricia Hearst, has died. She was 82. Singer, not Hearst. It's kind of weird how they wrote that, right? Singer, a clinical psychologist and former professor of psychology at UC Berkeley. It's always fucking Berkeley with these MK people. Now, all these MKU people, it's just like whether they stay there for eternity um, or make a pit stop, they're going to Berkeley. It's just, it's a must, I guess. Hey, JC, thanks for being here. Always good to see you. So it's always Berkeley with these fucking hippies. Okay, let's see. So, psychology at UC Berkeley, who also was known for her work on schizophrenia, uh, died of pneumonia Sunday in a Berkeley hospital after a long illness. Singer, who did groundbreaking research on the brainwashing of American soldiers captured during the Korean War, often was sought out by lawyers as a expert witness and by the news media for comment in high-profile cases, including the People's Temple and the mass murder suicide. Wait, why did they put it like that? The People's Temple and the mass murder suicide at Jonestown. Okay. The search for the Hillside Strangler in Los Angeles and the Branch Davidian and Heaven Gates cult. Branch Davidians, I disagree that they're a cult. Yeah, I'll just stick with that. That's a whole other episode. We're going to touch on Waco at some point. Okay, so up to this point, she's died. What's really interesting about her is she did have a very prominent career, but unlike her counterparts, she didn't make as big of an impact, or at least as noticeable of one, at least on the surface level, in my opinion. I think when comparing the work they actually did, like remove the feelings, the personal feelings, kind of remove who did the work, I actually think that her work is better. Like the work on the cult stuff is pretty good, although it's really hard to top what Lifton says, because Jay Lifton, he was spot on. I mean, everything that he wrote still holds up today. And I do highly recommend reading the work that they put out, because it was something important to them. I do believe some of these people were in it for the money. I didn't know there was that much money in it. But at least these main people, I know for a fact they did have a genuine interest in being the best that they could be. Now, am I going to take mental health advice from any of them? Hell no. But, if I am trying to learn about some of these topics, I'm definitely going to pick it up. It's going to be in the rotation of books, is what I'm trying to say. You just got to keep it in perspective, right? You got to remember who it was. So you can't be like, oh no, they actually weren't that bad. No, they were. But this was just one good thing that you can still get good out of. So part one mentioned Dr. Singer showed up on the dust cover for the Jonestown book, Raven. Now, we went through this, but real quick, this is insane to me. Like, okay. So the book Raven, if no one's ever read it, it is the Jonestown authority. It is the most well-researched, not documented. The word's escaping me. It is the bound authority on what happened at Jonestown officially. Anyone who does any research into the subject or anything, that's the place you go. But there is not one single mention anywhere of CIA involvement. Now, for anyone who was here when I did my bonus episode about Jonestown, or any work that you've done on your own or seen things, there was beyond I don't even know how to put it into words correctly. There was such massive amounts of involvement that the only way that you could ignore it would be intentionally trying to deceive people, or if you were just retarded as such. That's it. The two people who wrote the book, one of them was a journalist who was the leading expert in brainwashing, uh, in brainwashing news. Um, it's so interesting. And then the other co-author was actually a former aide to Congressman Leo Ryan, which is also insane. So because it just spider webs out even further. So Raven. Raven is interesting because not one single mention of the CIA at Jonestown, down in Guyana. They were crawling all over that place. But not only that, Raven is the code name, the CIA code name used for Jim Jones. I have heard, this can't be substantiated, but supposedly he picked it himself. I don't know how true that is, but it is confirmed that it was his code name. So a book like The Authority of all like Jonestown literature, is written by somebody who is also really well known, the top guy for reporting on all of the MK Ultra church committee hearing stuff, anything that comes out in the media, nationwide. Anyways, it was going to be this guy. Now there's just like all these other strange connections, and they put out this book by the name of Raven, a code name for Jim Jones. So it's just really strange. And then lastly, Dr. Margaret Singer shows up on the cover. And she was paid to do this, but I find it funny. So I have gone ahead and provided a link to the archive.org version of the book. I believe that's a link that you can download it from, if you're curious. If it's not, let me know if anyone wants it, and I can send it to you. Let's see here. Oh no, don't freeze on me. Come on. Oh, come on. Here I am trying to save a picture, and looks like it's just one too many things. Okay, so Raven, the Untold Story of the Reverend Jim Jones and His People by Tim Ritterman with John Jacobs. Let's see here. So, to the CIA, he was known by the codename Raven. It says it. Okay. In 1982, Tim Ritterman, a reporter who survived the airstrip assault, and his colleague John Jacobs published Raven, which was intended to be the most comprehensive, all-inclusive, definitive book on the subject of Jonestown. The best review of this book comes from its dust cover comments by psychologist and Professor Margaret Singer, who wrote the following. Tim Ritterman, with the aid of John Jacobs, has produced what can be considered the definitive psychohistory of Jim Jones and the People's Temple. There has been a plethora of hastily written works on the People's Temple, but none made Jim Jones and the Temple fathomable. Ritterman and Jacobs have succeeded. They convey the essence of the psychological and social processes that Jim Jones, the master manipulator, set in motion. Jones is no longer a mystery. This book is a major contribution. Whether she means that or not, that is a hell of a review. And if you're out there trying to get on, the New York Times bestseller, you're trying to get on Oprah to get your book reviewed, that's going to help. So, supposedly, based on what this says, is that Margaret Singer was paid to write that review. Happens all the time in the industry. As she was paid by Time Magazine, also a spook cutout, by the way. Just CIA and FBI connections up and down, Life and Time Magazine both. For her comments on Jonestown and by the prosecution for her testimony in the Patty Hearst trial. Just the connections never end. Get dizzy finding all of them. Let's see here. Okay, so one thing that doesn't come up when you search for Dr. Margaret Singer is her contribution to the False Memory Syndrome Foundation. She was on the board of advisors. So there's a screenshot of the website, still up. I was actually just on it earlier today. Still there. Still have a profile. Still doesn't say anything bad. But when you search her, even on some of the more privacy oriented or freedom of speech oriented search engines, it still doesn't come up. So I don't think it's a results thing. I do think it's just her. Once again, not making as big of an impact as her colleagues, but also a concerted effort to keep that down, keep it away. So, along with the others on the advisory board, they are all considered to be significant in the foundation's powerful impact. And she was as well. I mean, she was right there with them all along. Like, she might have been the third wheel or fourth wheel or whatever, but she was there. She was partaking. She also helped defend people who, okay, I can't say they didn't have a right to a defense, because that would just go against like fundamental beliefs that everyone does have a right to a fair and speedy trial. Yet, when you're constantly being paid to or paid by the defense to usually, call the survivors or victims of whatever crime you committed against them, basically getting called in and paid on behalf of the person who committed the crime to tell them that the victims or survivors are liars, it's not a good look. It's not a good look. So even if you're doing it genuinely just for the sake of objective truth, for justice and freedom, like Loftus says, then it's still not a good look when that's the only thing you do. I mean, hell, I might be kind of loose with my morals too if I charge $600 an hour, No, I wouldn't. But it makes sense why she does. So, nonetheless, Margaret Singer was involved in the False Memory Syndrome Foundation. From what I understand, she was recruited. She wasn't like sought after. Once some of her other friends got brought in, they basically told Pamela and Peter Fraid that they definitely need to have Singer in on this. And boom, there she is. So she was there from the beginning. So she was there for all the terrible, terrible things that happened. Let's see here. Make sure everything else is going well. Checking in on the chat and everything. I'm also streaming over at on Podbean for anyone who does have that platform. Of course, it is audio only, but I know some people are into that. So I like to call them my blind viewers. Get it? Because, okay. Let's see. So, okay. The advisory board for the False Memory Syndrome Foundation seems to be a who's who of MK Ultra, Monarch, mind control, behavior modification, uh, radiation, human experiments, you name it. It seems like almost anyone on that list would be not too far away from one of these laboratories if they weren't running them themselves. Before the False Memory Syndrome Foundation, there are some connections that need to be made. In part 1, an essay named The Penal Colony claims MK Ultra didn't end, but instead moved to cults. Now, this is where the thread takes the hard pivot that I was having a problem with earlier, but we are not going to get ahead of that, or we're not going to go and keep moving forward for just a minute. There's a couple other things I wanted to get to. Before we leave false memory, so I highly recommend this book, The Truth about False Memory Syndrome by James G. Friesen. Amazing book. It's the best source I've found that explains how memory actually works. He's an incredibly brilliant man, and he's not condescending. He's not trying to speak above anyone like some of these academics like to do. It's like, okay, look, I'm a nerd too. We're just nerding out over different things. Doesn't mean you have to be an asshole about it. But they are sometimes. And it's that whole, like, posh blue blood. Yes. And he's not like that. But this is a man that was in the thick of, the thick of the mud in the skeeters and everything during the late 80s, early 90s, for the Satanic Panic or Christian Pearl Clutching Contest or whatever people are calling it. It's a phenomenal book, and there's a couple of things I wanted to read out of it before we moved on. The first thing was being just right in the very beginning, actually. So he's discussing like here, he says, what kind of a society turns a deaf ear to suffering children? And I couldn't agree more. But at this point, he's kind of dancing around the idea of why the public is they're seeming to just accept all of this false memory stuff so easily without any pushback. Fun little fact for anyone who doesn't know. If there is a journalist that works at a newspaper, local newspaper, massive national or even international newspaper, doesn't matter. This will happen anywhere. If you have a real journalist, that went to university to be taught how to speak in that weird newscaster voice, if they have an interview with somebody or are getting a comment from somebody and that person happens to have a PhD, they don't get fact checked, period, at all. They think it's a waste of time. Doesn't matter. Doesn't happen. If it does happen, it's going to be rare, and it's going to be maybe the journalist or maybe a good editor. But this is not common to question or fact check people with PhDs because, you can't apparently be a PhD holder and still stupid. But I think anyone that's lived through the last, 5 years or so, especially during the lockdowns and everything, I think there's a very good argument to be made that you can wear your white coat and you can have your multiple degrees and still be a retarded piece of shit. It just shows that you can follow orders. Besides, the more diplomas there are, the less they're worth. So cool. You just brought down the value of everyone else's. Good for you. Anyways, so he's kind of asking exactly why, like, this is happening to the public. Like, why is the public reacting this way? So he says the summary implies ritual abuse is a mirage, even though a few cases may qualify. It is shaped to convey a popular spin. The public is gently assured there is nothing to worry about. There is no need to get involved, and there is no need to listen to people who report ritual abuse. Perhaps the public is also being asked not to think. What evidence do they expect to find at any large-scale, organized cult? A manual on how to carry out acts of abuse? A nationwide computer printout listing criminal cult leaders and their phone numbers? Written guidelines for covering up abuse more effectively? Please, federal officials, do not waste my money on research headed nowhere. Such acts are obviously illegal, so they will not be documented by perpetrators. There will be no paper trail. And I mean, it's true. It's true. There's not going to be there are going to be so many rare, incredibly rare cases where there would be leftover, so to speak, of anything to tie them back to this. So when people are asking, what proof, what proof, what proof? Well, it's not quite so easy as just like, here's a picture of it happening. Not to mention, if you did have that, it would be illegal. Let's see. So, Helper Crow, good afternoon. Good to see you, dude. Do you think the Satanic Panic was a reverse psyop to cover the real SRA going on? Yes and no. So it's a little complicated. Well, okay, it's not. But what I think happened. Actually, I'll leave that up real quick. So when there are a bunch of people that go through mind control programming, or any sort of behavior modification programs like people were at the time, unless you are in a program where you get your where you get that programming popped off or refreshed, it eventually starts breaking down. Like it's just how it happens. It's how it works. That's why people have handlers, because the handlers are able to keep that programming fresh. That way, things don't start breaking down. They don't start asking questions and remembering things. So, at the time when we started seeing this huge spike in reported cases of childhood sexual abuse, it was around the time when we should have started seeing a lot of people their programming start breaking down. It is pretty well known that if you are unfortunate enough to suffer being a survivor, a victim of some of these incredibly traumatic and horrific style or types of abuse, when your body inevitably disassociates, which is a defense mechanism, which is real, unlike false memory, which is not. Um, the disassociated parts of you that do remember the abuse can come back naturally. Not with everyone, but some people it can. But it comes back when your body knows that you're ready and knows that your psyche can handle it. So it's really just like an amazing process. I can't believe the brain actually does this, but it makes sense. So I think we started seeing a bunch of people and their programming start to deteriorate. And we started seeing a lot more people start asking questions. Now, one of the largest contributing factors to the satanic panic was the state of Washington passing a law that people could come in and actually sue their offenders, the perpetrators, the abusers. They could sue them after the fact, like years after the fact. It's pretty common now, but it wasn't back then. I believe it was 84, 85. Anyways, there was a bunch of cases that started popping up, and then it became a big problem. It's like, oh shit, people are remembering their abuse. They're coming after their people meaning usually their family. And we've got to do something about this. So at the same time, parallel to this, was a sensational media, which seems to be at the heart of almost every story like this. You had people like Geraldo, Oprah, back when she was Oprah and not O. You had Donahue. You had all of these different people who, first and foremost, are not news. They are entertainment. Whether they were had genuine interest in journalism didn't matter. Every single one of those talk show hosts cared about nothing but ratings. That's it. So, I mean, they would do good work sometimes, but that wasn't the focus. The sensationalism was. I mean, Jerry Springer came out of that attitude. The whole reason his show existed was because the fights got more attention, got the ratings. So these people that the 80s and early 90s talk shows, it was just, they pushed sensationalism. Now, that's not to say that all of it is bad, because it's not. There is some of it that's good. The one episode of Geraldo where he had Maury Terry on, and a few other people, is actually really great, surprisingly. And I think it was done by accident. Nonetheless, we had a media pushing out a bunch of what if questions. Oh, what if Dungeons and Dragons actually is made by witches? Oh no. What if that what if that Led Zeppelin record actually, says something when you play it backwards? Like, they pushed a bunch of these like ideas, and they did it in such a way that it got people spooked. So I think that there was this genuine fear, because you got to think about it. Like, the end of the 70s, like, we've had this huge run of serial killers. We've had, like, this huge economic downturn. All of these things, like, we're coming on the tail end of it, moving into the self-indulgent 80s. And so everyone's kind of on edge, and this is also at the same time when women enter the workforce in the largest amount, and to stay there since World War II. It's basically women's participation in the workforce started then, as we know it today. So I think it was all of these things kind of meshed together. And the people who were in charge of abusing kids or keeping this programming going saw an opportunity to be able to utilize this. And this is why I think towards the end of the satanic panic, like things got really weird, right? Like there were like hundreds of phone calls of, some crazy satanic cult of teenagers out in the field, like burning cats or something. And then the cops show up and then there's nothing, you know? I've heard a lot of those stories. But I also think that those stories are invented to bury any real ones. There's a man, let's see, it's Mike something or other. Let's see, Mike. So he was a former cop, actually in my area, in my state county. Let's see. And he had busted a cult. Mike King. How could I forget a name like that? Old Mike King. He had busted a cult here in the same county I live in, and I had never heard of this. It was wild. And because of this bust, he was actually picked by our then governor to head one of two state task forces involving involving the investigation of satanic ritual abuse. And I believe Mike to be one of these people who actually did cover up. I don't know why. I don't know, maybe he was threatened. However, what he has said in interviews regarding satanic ritual abuse in the state of Utah is that there was no evidence. Not that there just wasn't enough, because that's what most people said. There were several police officers that said that they wanted to be able to make this problem stop if they could prove it. There were several police officers that walked away still believing, many that walked away gloating, saying, "Told you so." But Mike King walked away saying that there was no evidence at all. So I find that incredibly interesting. Because what the task forces both determined was that it does exist. That it's a lot more common than people think. It's also more horrific than what we know. That it is tied with other criminal organizations. And that there was not enough evidence to be able to land any convictions. It's a lot different, it's a lot different when you're trying to prove something exists or has happened, is occurring in society, and versus trying to get a conviction in a court of law. Those are two different standards of evidence there. So yeah, Mike King, very interesting guy. Been trying to get him on my show. I think he keeps dodging me. Come on, Mike. Anyways, so it's a long-winded answer, but it's a really complicated situation. I don't think it was just so cut and dry. I think it caught a lot of people off guard, even the shit people, even the the programmers. They didn't know how to handle on a mass scale all of these people losing their programming. So they had to come up with something. They had to come up with a reason why this was happening and explain it away, which is really where the need for false memory came in. So hopefully that answered your question. There's even more I could go into it on that. There's some specific incidences that I think convey this, but we can talk more about that at another time. So let's see here. Now, the other thing I wanted to read out of this, The Truth About False Memory Syndrome, is right at the very start of chapter 2. Let's see. At the very start of chapter 2. Chapter 2 is titled, Can a Memory Be False? Which is a incredibly valid question. You'd be surprised how many people don't ask. So it says, at the very end of her therapy session, a client asked if I was at work on another book. I said yes and mentioned the title. A surprised look appeared on her face. You mean there's no such thing as false memory? My answer went something like this. Those two words do not belong together. They contradict one another. If something is false, it cannot be a memory. People mistakenly think memories are either or. True or false. There is an element of distortion in memories. But if something is a memory, there must be truth in it. And that keeps getting left out of the debates. If there is some distortion on the surface of a memory, we do not just throw it out. There is still something true in it. Memories come from somewhere. If minds produce fantasies on the spot, that is not a memory. That is a pseudo-memory, which looks nothing like a memory. I help clients reduce distortions and find what is accurate within the memory. So I thought that this was incredibly important to point out. Just when you start putting false memory under scrutiny, under genuine scrutiny, it starts falling apart. And I thought that was one of the best arguments I've heard against its very existence in the first place. It's a flawed premise, a false memory. If it's a memory, how could it be false? A memory has a very strong implication that it happened and you were therefore able to remember. You were able to tap into your brain archive and replay the memory. Let's see, Ashley Young. Let's see. Do you believe you can false memory yourself, or does someone else have to put it in you or plant it in you? Phrasing. So here's the thing. False memories, to be fair, okay, there is a version that can happen, a version of false memories, from what I understand, that can happen. And it can usually, or it does usually take place in therapy sessions. And it's usually because the therapist is inexperienced and or the therapist has not diagnosed the client correctly. Hold on, give me just one sec. So, can you false memory yourself? Well, the problem with that is is that your brain can never accept something that didn't actually happen. So imagine if you had like a sibling, older, younger, doesn't matter, but they looked at you and they said, hey, do you remember that time about 10 years ago, or that time when you were a little kid and you stubbed your toe and then, you sat down and cried and blah, blah, blah. You could not remember that, but you're going to trust your family member or trusted friend. And you can say, well, I don't remember that, but I'll take your word for it. But that doesn't mean you now have a memory, right? Like, You don't remember it. This is one of the biggest flaws in the Lost in the Mall study, which, hold on for that, because I did a whole thread just for Loftus. Oh, and we're going to do more after that too. It's going to be great. But so can you false memory yourself? In the definition of how the false memory syndrome foundation would present that question, I would have to say no. No, you cannot. Now, can when these MK Ultra doctors, when they were in their laboratories and working on things, did they end up finding a way to basically electrocute the brain in a very particular voltage at a very particular rate, and for a particular length of time? And then did that end up causing genuine pseudo memories or fake memories to develop in the brain? Yes, that most certainly happened. I believe it started with subproject 119, subproject and subproject 62, I believe. A massive thing that gets incredibly overlooked with MK Ultra, because it's usually overshadowed by the LSD or the other drugs and stuff, is the connection to cybernetics. Do they have technology to be able to force a memory into somebody? They do. They most certainly do. But that's not the same thing as somebody without, the aid of a incredibly terrifying implantable device is able to just make up an entirely false memory, get it implanted in you, and then also have your brain recognize it as a memory. Even in the best of conditions with these pro false memory studies, the best that happens is that the people who do find the false memory or are unable to find the fake memory always end up realizing which memory was false or was made up, because your brain cannot accept a lie as a truth, like experiencing something and it going from short-term memory to long-term memory. Our brains doesn't work that way. However, there can be things, and I don't know enough about this, but I do know that there are some concerns involving like hypnosis and hypnotherapy. I know there can be, if somebody has bad intentions, somebody can really mess you up. Hypnosis is not a game. It's not a toy. It's not a Ouija board sold, to 8-year-olds. Hypnosis can be incredibly dangerous, especially if you don't know what you're doing. And I do know that there are some things that can be done to negatively affect people. So hopefully that answers your question. Let's see. It's really interesting. It makes me wonder about them weird sound vibration meditation groups where they have singing bowls and stuff. So this actually is part of that. So, I mean, I always hate to agree with hippies on anything, because it's usually, a real thing that they take and they bastardize it. But there is something to be said about humans being able to respond to frequencies. We do all the time. Like our bodies do emit a field of energy. It's proven. Now, what your typical new ager is going to get you into might be fun or interesting. It's not going to be really all that beneficial. Now, the meditation bowls, I've used them before, and they definitely can help you silence your mind and get better at meditation if that's what you're looking for. Outside of that, I don't know the benefit. I'm not the person to ask regarding that. But just like everything else, a lot of these binaural beats, a lot of these different tones and vibrations can be used for good and bad. If anyone happens to remember the hearing test that people took in elementary school, anybody that went to, government school or public school from 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, and I think they still do them. Anyways, you'd go into a room, you'd put on the headphones and, beep, put up your hand if you could hear it, or there was actually a couple of versions that I did throughout my elementary. Those were actually weaponized tones. Because why does a school care about your hearing? Why isn't that something that your doctor takes care of? I don't know. But they cared about it frequently. What they were doing is they were trying to find the kids who had the ability to have a neural feedback loop, which basically means that you're going to be easily suggestible. So through these hearing tests and the tones and everything, they were trying to track down kids to brainwash. So cool. Anyways, more on that later because, the GATE program, it's a big deal. Big deal. Anyways, let's get back to it. So now we are jumping into Manson. So this is really interesting. Manson's parole officer, one of many, Roger Smith, a Berkeley doctoral student, was part of an experimental program called the San Francisco Project. Roger Smith is still alive, by the way. The San Francisco Project meant to study how different sized PO caseloads, parole officer caseloads, affect the recidivism rates of parolees. Each officer was given a different number of cases. And yes, that is him there with his beautiful, beautiful mustache. Might be a shit person, but he can grow a hell of a stash. Roger, not a career parole officer, was a doctoral candidate at Berkeley focusing on the link between drug use and gang violence, which is incredibly interesting considering where he is working and who is alleged to be around there. The Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic, HAFMC, opened in by Dr. David Smith, no relation, for cheap medical care for a rapidly growing hippie population. It also works perfect to offer free medical when you're trying to experiment on people. Works perfect. They'll give consent to a lot of things. So, Roger Smith's tenure at the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic allowed him to collaborate with David Smith, previous David Smith, Dr. David Smith. In exchange for CIA funding, the pair researched recreational drug use among their patients, LSD being the main substance used. So this is interesting because supposedly both of these guys are like, okay, well, let's just work together. Okay, fine. One opens up a free medical clinic because he's just so Uh, he's, he's just wants to help everyone. Definitely no ulterior motive in San Francisco in the 60s. Um, and so, in exchange for CIA funding, the pair researched recreational drug use among their patients. So it sounded like the CIA was probably looking for, some sort of base to be able to put down operations in the area. They said, and I don't know how they would have or been in contact with each other than Roger Smith was at Berkeley, which CIA is still at Berkeley. So maybe that's how. But seems like they were like, okay, well, we will do the testing for you at our medical clinic. Although Roger Smith isn't really involved in the clinic, so I don't know why he had so much sway in this decision making. That should probably be answered. But they just offered up the clinic and just said, okay, well, if you give us money, we'll do the work. And the CIA said, yeah, enough said. Let's go. Let's see. So, wait, okay. So this is also very interesting. For anyone who doesn't know, at the time, let's see what year this is. This is 1977. So less in the 60s and 70s, at the height of the LSD movement, largely the only people producing it in any meaningful amount was the CIA. There were people that allegedly or supposedly thought that they were doing it, on their own. But years later, it turns out that they got CIA funding from, whatever. It's like, no, you guys had an entirely different attitude towards, the glowies than we do now. If I had a Fed approach me asking me to do something illegal and that they'll pay for it, they just want me to do it so they don't have to, I'm going to say no. I mean, hopefully I'm not ever doing anything to where that situation would happen. However, back then, it wasn't so like, fuck you, feds. Like at the very beginning of this stream, the video I played was Timothy Leary talking about how he credits the CIA with the entire social and rebellion movement of the 60s and early 70s. And I agree with him 100%, including the fact that Timothy Leary himself was on the payroll of the CIA. But he did it willingly. He enjoyed that. He actually understood that the CIA was going to help morph and mold the next generation, and he wanted to be a part of that, making decisions in that sort of environment. And I don't necessarily disagree with that, but that's also kind of like a megalomaniac sort of way to look at it. Point is, at the time, anyone who would be producing enough LSD for any sort of meaningful like research results at a free clinic, I have a hard time believing that that wouldn't be connected to the feds somehow. First of all, the amount of people that produce LSD, tiny amount. It's not like weed growers, right? Even mushroom growers, beer brewers, any of these people, there are tons of them. The people that produce LSD, there has only ever been like 8 or 10 of them ever. It's just when they produce it, they produce so much. You don't have to keep producing it. Also, after they meaning federal government, once they scheduled it, Schedule 1, producing it, it's like, get the hell out of here. That is at least officially when the CIA stopped asking smart dumb hippies to make their LSD for him. But this is just, it's weird. And why does Roger Smith have that much sway in a clinic that he doesn't own? I don't know. Let's see here. So, private institutions used in CIA front to control behavior. 77, let's see here. So, this is after it started coming out, obviously. So, this article doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the Haight-Ashbury Clinic, at least that I can remember. But it is there to show that this was happening a lot, more than they admitted. So, researcher Alan Rose took initiative and visited the Manson family's Los Angeles compound. He'd use drugs and participate in bizarre sexual rites. Rose returned to San Francisco after 4 months. So, I know I'm the one that wrote this, but I remember reading this paper. Link for anyone who wants to. And the way he writes about it, the researcher, Rose, writes about it, is that he just, took off with the Manson family for a weekend and, went and had a sleepover. But then you find out that it was 4 months later that he returns. So he's just up in the woods with these incredibly violent hippies, or freaks, I guess. And he goes up there, lives their life the way that they're doing it, and it writes a paper about it. So incredibly fascinating. Definitely worth the read. In 1970, Rose and David Smith co-authored the first scholarly study on the Manson family, the Group Marriage Commune, a case study. So a case study on communist polyamory. Cool. Boo. Let's see here. There's something. If I can find it real quick, I'll do it, but I don't want to keep focusing on this. Of course, I keep thinking of all the fun things that I have in a saved folder somewhere or something like that that I should have brought up. Okay, let's see. So I have a documentary that I found. Let's see. And it is one of the only documentaries that was filmed directly after Charlie and the girls were arrested. So, I mean, these kids are, most of them are, kids, early 20s, and they are, wow, they are, it's intense to watch. It is really intense to watch. Yeah, I don't want to keep wasting time on that, but I'll post that so everyone, perfect timing for this. Everyone out there watching, do me a favor, hit the like, subscribe, share, leave a comment. Our big tech overlords have basically made it damn near impossible for me to get this out to you, to have these conversations, to ask and answer these questions and do all of this. And I'm a one-man crew. This is all me, everything. And, it's really, really difficult and frustrating putting so much into this, trying to reach as many of you as possible and being unable to. So I am just asking. It's free. Hit the like, hit the thumbs up, subscribe, leave a comment, do whatever you have to do. Leave a 5-star review somewhere. However, on that note, before I move on from that, I am about ready to drop some new merch. I was without a store for quite a while. I've got about 15 new t-shirt designs. And I'm gonna probably release 5 at a time. They're they're so cool. I can't wait. They're gonna be awesome. Um, and for some people, I have been asked before if there are ways to take financial donations. There are, and they will also be set up with the store with the new T-shirts and everything, and everything's going to get launched at once. But as a one-man crew, things take a minute, but this time next week it should be done. So, okay, enough grifting for now. So let's see here. So yeah, this guy goes up there, lives a degenerate lifestyle for a few months, and writes an academic paper about it. I mean, I wouldn't do that. Not my bag. But I love this country that we could do things like that. And that, think about it, somebody in his college department or wherever, their higher ups said, yeah, no, I like the idea. Go with that. I don't know. I find it funny. So let's see. Okay. Another researcher at the clinic is a familiar name, a CIA psychologist with a background in deprogramming victims, Dr. Louis Jolly West. He ran a clandestine study about LSD and drug use among hippies. West fixed a dilapidated Victorian near the clinic and used it as a hippie crack pad to study drug use. This was incredibly interesting if you know anything about this, because not only were most people suspicious of it, because, I mean, he could probably pull off a lot of things, but he ain't down with it. He's square, so I don't know. I just find it funny. It's like this academic, like he's a piece of shit. He's a monster, but he's just an academic trying to set up a study, like wearing a fake wig or like some stupid hippie clothes. I don't get it. Even his research students thought that he was fucking with them because of this, because it was like so ridiculous. They didn't know if he was kidding or if he was like being ironic or anything. They wrote it down in their papers, and you can find copies of them. It's hilarious. And so they just said, we just pretended and went with it because, maybe it went towards our grade. So he wasn't really fooling anyone, but he definitely tried. And they did get some information out of there. I don't know exactly how beneficial that was. But I think as far as like farming information, they got a lot more information out of the free clinic, which was kind of the big deal, right? Real quick, I also did want to, for anyone who doesn't know, I want to touch on Jolly West for just a minute, because that's really what the second half of this thread was. There we go. It's really what the second half of this thread was about. Why it went from Margaret Singer to Manson and San Francisco hippies, all that. It was to introduce Jolly West as we have introduced others before, because if I had to pick the top people off of the False Memory Syndrome Advisory Board, we are talking Jolly West, Martin T. Orne, Loftus, Elizabeth Loftus, Ralph Underwager, I think. Of course, everyone contributed, but the people that made it function, the 10% of people doing 90% of the work. Yeah. Also, Jolin West just needs to be expanded upon any chance you can. So let's see here. I'm not going to read all of this, obviously, but some of it definitely needs to be put on record. So let's see. Okay, so this is interesting. So, while at Luckland Air Force Base, Dr. West examined Air Force pilots who had been converted to communism while held as POWs in the Korean War. Based on his experience, he published a paper entitled United States Air Force Prisoners of the Chinese Communist: Methods of Forceful Indoctrination, Observations, and Interviews. How dry. Let's see here. Other papers published by Dr. West were entitled Sleep Deprivation, Lysergic Acid Diethylamide, LSD. Let's see. There was a paper called Brainwashing, Hypnosis and Experimental Psychopathology, Sensory Isolation, Monkeys and Brainwashing, Psychiatry, Brainwashing, and the American Character. Oh, I bet that's a great paper. Brainwashing, Conditioning, and DDD, which standed for debility, dependency, and dead. Okay. Other papers went on with other titles like Dissociative Reaction, Hallucinogens, Psychobiology of Racial Violence, which that makes a lot of sense, Flight from Violence, Hippies and the Green Rebellion, so on and so forth. Let's see. So, a list of Dr. West's military appointments obtained from his curriculum is included in Appendix G, which would be hard to show you guys. Let's see, his curriculum does not mention that he received top secret clearance from the CIA as a contractor on MKUltra Sub-Project 43. This was a $20,800 grant given to Dr. West in 1956 while he was chairman of the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Oklahoma. And mind you, he was super young when he gained tenure. He was like, I can't remember off the top of my head, but he was really young, in his 20s, I believe. Let's see. Where was I? The sub-project proposal submitted to the CIA by Dr. West is entitled Psychosociology or Psychophysiological wow, okay, studies of hypnosis and suggestibility. And an accompanying document is entitled Studies on Dissociative States. So this is important to bring up because the False Memory Syndrome Foundation is proponents, its advisory board, and, you know, smarmy fucking assholes that think they know more than they actually do will always tell you, you know, if they're a proponent of false memory, that dissociative identity or dissociative states don't exist. That false memory is the thing that exists. But I just read, like, and there are several of these papers from Jolly West, the man himself, where he is, first of all, acknowledging that they exist because he's studying them, So the existence of a dissociative state, um, that doesn't need to be argued. It's already been established. But he is studying with a $20,000 grant from the CIA, which came through the Human Ecology Fund, to study disassociation. And yet there are people who say, no, it doesn't exist. It's not real. Okay, bud. Okay. And what's interesting, along with Margaret Singer, Jolly West was like tied at the hip to Martin Orne. Like those two worked together and they were like best buds from what I gather. I wasn't there. Maybe I'm wrong, but from everything I can read and find, it seems like they were pretty great friends. Let's see here. Trying to find the most interesting stuff. Let's see. So, let's see. Let me read the name of that page one more, or that title to. Okay, so this is referring to the Studies of Dissociative States document that Jolly did. Let's see. Only the first page of this document stamped warning notice, sensitive, intelligent sources and methods involved. Okay, juicy. And reproduced in its entirety above is available under the Freedom of Information Act. That Dr. West continued to study dissociation intensively into the 1960s is demonstrated by the fact that he wrote the section entitled Dissociative Reactions in the major textbook of psychiatry in North America. In 1980, Dr. West co-authored a chapter in the next edition of this textbook, the Comprehensive Textbook of Psychiatry, along with Dr. Margaret Singer, entitled Cults, Quacks, and Non-Professional Psychotherapies. Interesting title coming from these two. Dr. Singer thanks, among others, Richard Offshay, Dr. Offshay, and Louis Jolin West for support of her work in the acknowledgments to her book, Cults in Our Midst. That is an interesting book, but it did kind of seem, especially them pointing it out, that she was like the little sister, like being like, oh, come on, brother, just read my book and tell me it's good. Just kind of take it that way. Being kind of an ass. Okay. I think that was pretty much it. Let's see. Oh, okay, so this is kind of interesting. In his MKUltra subproject 43 proposal, Dr. West describes a research plan that involved many of the mind control techniques of both the communist Chinese and leaders of destructive cults. So that's interesting. So I thought we were supposed to be doing research on how to find these out because they brainwashed our soldiers, but we don't know how to do it. So we've got to hurry and do this because they already have it, but yet he wrote a fucking proposal for a sub-project. Oh, my Lord. Okay, so Dr. West devoted 4 decades to study, writing, and examination on disassociation, hypnosis, communist mind control, and just mind control, dude. Hallucinations, sensory deprivation, and methods of social influence. He concluded that the methods used by destructive cults result in the creation of new identities and disassociated states. The same methods, when applied to experimental subjects under Bluebird, Artichoke, and MKUltra, also resulted in the creation of amnesia, new identities, and disassociated states. This is the Manchurian Candidate program. And I believe that was, all of this information is great. So, but I think for what today's purpose was, that was it. Let's see here, just real quick. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Let's see. I can't take credit for all the work, but hopefully my soothing baritone voice is easy to listen to. Let's see. So, files for MKUltra Subproject 43, for which Dr. West was the contractor with top secret clearance. Mind you, getting a contractor position is crazy. But on top of that, getting top secret clearance, there was only like 5 people that were able to get that done. So it's impressive, really impressive. And it means that he had a lot of sway. Let's see here. With the contractor with top secret clearance contained in a letter to a unidentified major dated 18th of April 1955, the letter states that due to circumstances beyond our control, our channel of communication has been changed. Beginning upon receipt of this letter, all mail will be addressed to the following location. Whited out or redacted. The instructions listed below must be followed implicitly. All communications must be double enveloped. The outer envelope must be addressed as indicated above. All mail must be transmitted as first class, registered, return receipt requested. True or full names must not appear. Geez, what the hell happened? Anyways, okay, so that was actually a letter to Sidney Gottlieb. Okay, I'm going to remember this because it looks like it's a lot bigger of a story than I want to get into today, but I'll bookmark this so we can get into it at a later date. That is interesting. Okay, so enough of that for right now. By the way, anyone curious, the CIA doctors by Colin A. Ross, fantastic resource, absolutely fantastic, worth the money, ain't that expensive. So what have we established? Well, we've established that, for one, a lot of these people who were on the False Memory Syndrome Foundation board of advisors, whether they were sought out by Peter and Pamela or Ralph Underwager, because he was the first member, mind you. He was there from the very beginning with the idea. So he also helped pick people out. And so no matter if you were a professional and got a hold of the board wanting to be a member, which happened a couple of times, or the board seeked you out because they wanted your reputation to lend credence to this new, completely made-up medical condition. Either way, these people agreed to it, which I think is insane. But all of these people have had connections. For instance, Robert J. Lifton, Jolly West, and Margaret Singer were all started at Walter Reed. So these people in their tiny, tiny world tiny, scary little world, have been with each other pretty much this whole time. Now they're agreeing to hop onto a board of advisors, meaning they are putting their reputation on the line. Like, that is a ballsy move. Like, this isn't just yeah, I'll just throw my name on that. Like, no, no, no. This is could ruin your reputation, possibly. But the chance is there. So you're gonna risk what, the last 40 years of your career, 30 years of your career, for what? Pamela and Peter Freyd, a out of work school teacher and a drunk who just somehow was able to get a master's degree in mathematics. Okay, and there's something's not adding up. But nonetheless, all of these people know each other. All of these people worked extensively on MK Ultra. All of these people are working with their common obsession, which is the mind. It's not so much that they had experience in researching trauma. They had the common or shared interest in inventing and refining the ability to control somebody and starting that process through the mind, or injecting chemicals, or pretty much any way they could get it done. Which, the idea of controlling somebody through their mind is not a new one. There have been tons of people throughout all of history that have had the same idea. I guess you could call it the holy grail of psychopathic superpowers. Let's see. It just reminded me. So, the desire to control somebody through their mind, not a new idea. So am I surprised that people out there are still interested? No. What I'm surprised about is how, let's see, let me leave this up on just that incredibly normal looking person. Wow. What I am surprised about is how ruthless these people were when researching how to get this to work. They dedicated almost their entire lives. I mean, I'm genuinely surprised they did have time for other things. To be able to get this done, I mean, we don't even know hardly anything because most of the records were destroyed. What we've been able to do since the financial records got released in the 70s, right, financial records, that was all that was left. The rest of them destroyed. So we've been able to piece together what we know today, and that what we know today, that's where it started, was financial records. That's pretty good. But considering the amount of things that we don't know, that is truly terrifying, because what we do know is so horrific. It is genuinely horrific. I don't know if anyone watching has actually ever gone through a list to see exactly some of the things that they had done. It was just awful. Just awful. I will also be having, along with my MK Ultra stuff that is coming out to celebrate the 72nd anniversary, there will be a Substack article listing out all the various types of research and human rights abuses that were committed in MK Ultra. So for anyone who doesn't know, I will be having a Substack article that you can find soon within the next couple of days, I'm sure. Um, won't go into graphic detail, but enough detail. So let's see. Okay. All right. Not going to hold you guys for too much longer. I think we got pretty much everything we needed to get out today. So, first and foremost, I would just like to take a minute and tell everyone thank you for being here, putting up with me. And, I'm really hoping. Here's another reason why I was asking for some thumbs up and some likes and stuff, because this allows me to not only reach more people, but it makes things easier so I can make better content. Because if I'm being honest, I have this incessant drive to just produce the best content I possibly can. And it's all for you guys. Partially for me, so I can get it out of my head and I can get it out there. But I need somebody to listen to it, and so it's for you. It's for all of you. And hopefully, I'm doing a decent job at keeping this entertaining for how long it's going. But like I said, we're almost done here. So let's see. Let me just make sure we don't have anything else. Let's see. So much like Dr. Singer was involved with POWs returning from the Korean War, so was Jolly West. Let's see here. So his friends called him Jolly. For his middle name, I'm impressive girth and oversized personality. When he got out, he researched methods of controlling human behavior at Cornell University. That is strange. He would later claim to have studied 83 prisoners of war, 56 of whom had been forced to make false confessions. He and his colleagues were credited with reinterrogating the POWs into Western society, and maybe more important, getting them to renounce their claims about having used biological weapons. Like I was saying earlier, we basically did the brainwashing. I think their captors did too, but we weren't very nice to the returning POWs, is what I'm trying to say. So along with what I've already said, this is kind of important to know about Jolly West. West was a real go-getter and really impressed Sidney Gottlieb. In fact, I'm not sure if it's covered in this, but from what everyone can gather, it seems as though the LSD thing wouldn't have happened without Jolly West. It was Jolly who got Sidney Gottlieb interested in it. So, he was liked, he was respected, and people, it seemed like they just kind of gave in to him. So maybe he just really was that intimidating of a guy. He's big, burly, way too jolly, those people that are just like way too nice. It's like, you're creeping me out. Let's see. Yes, I have heard Gray's testimony and others, and it's no joke. It is no joke. And even some of the simple stuff is just, it's heartbreaking. But well, I'll save it for the end of this because that's kind of what I wanted to wrap up on. But knowing the horrors in which people have had to live and exist at all, or even hear about, which in its own way can be traumatizing to a much lesser extent, but having even hearing things along these lines is tough. It's definitely not for everybody. So to finish up real quick, needless to say, Wes added the experiments must eventually be put to the test in practical trials in the field. To this end, he asked Gottlieb for some sort of carte blanche. He would, who would the guinea pigs be? All throughout the MK Ultra documents, the test subjects, humans, mind you, um, various humans from all walks of life. Sometimes they stole children from orphans or orphanages. They took teen runaways. They took mental health patients from state hospitals, wards of the state, because nobody's coming for them. Prostitutes, kids out of the foster system, like prisoners, kids in school. Like, it's just everybody they could get their hands on without it becoming a problem, they did. So when it says, who would the guinea pigs be? That's who. Or there was even times, with some of the LSD testing where they would just poison people, just random people, wouldn't even tell them what's happening. And then they would sit back and watch the person go insane. And in fact, there was an acid test on the East Coast, so where Timothy Leary was stationed, and it was a professor, I believe, at a college. They were doing the acid test, and things got to a point where they were so high and so convinced of something that they actually jumped from the second story of the dorms, which is actually where the whole, you'll get so high that you'll, jump out of the window and kill you. That's where that came from. It was a big story because it was a professor who did it. Acid Dreams. That book, Acid Dreams, actually has a reference to it if anyone's interested. But yeah, so guinea pigs. I just find that so offensive. It's like, come here, you little guinea pig. Let me just violate your natural rights. Okay. He listed 4 groups: basic airmen, volunteers, patients, and others, possibly including prisoners in the local stockade. Only the volunteers would be paid. The others would be unwilling, and though it wasn't spelled out, unwitting. It would be easier to preserve his secrecy if he were inducing specific mental disorders in people who already exhibited them. Certain patients required hypnosis in therapy, or suffering from dissociative disorders, trances, figures, amnesias, might lend themselves to our experiments. Official investigators into MKUltra yielded little information about its subject, but Jolly West's letter suggests that the program cast a wide net. Gottlieb's reply came on letterhead from, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that word. Not even going to try to pretend. It's a front company he used to correspond with MK Ultra subcontractors. My good friend, he wrote, I had been wondering whether your apparent rapid and comprehensive grasp of our problems could possibly be real. You had indeed developed an admirably accurate picture for exactly what we are after. For this, I am deeply grateful. Jolly, reported back to the CIA that his earlier investigations were a success and that he knew how to replace true memories with false ones in human beings without their knowledge. While the original document was discovered by Tom O'Neill, the document seems to be classified still by the CIA. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to leave my opinion out of this one for now. But I just do find that interesting. Think what you will about that. So I think we all know what happened, or at least can speculate what was likely to happen. So this is the end of the thread. So we made it. All right. Let's see. Hold on. Okay. Made it all the way through. So this was incredibly important, this last little bit with Jolly, because it really does show the precursor, um, the precursor work that he was doing that would later be utilized by the False Memory Syndrome Foundation to give legitimacy to a condition that is absolutely fake, that has never once been given as a diagnosis, that has never once been recognized in any official capacity. It's never been in the DSM. Not once. It never will be, because it's made up. False memory is bullshit. The problem with the term false memory is because there is something that exists, like we discussed earlier. There is something there. So this is partially a confusion in terms, some wordplay, which the False Memory Syndrome Foundation people are using to their advantage 100%. These are not dumb people. They're very, what was the word I was looking for? They're very conniving, but they're rather ingenious, and they're incredibly manipulative. They'll do what they need to. So if it means that they have to manipulate some words, or, fluff things up a bit, under or downplay other things, they'll do it. In fact, Jolly West did spend a lot of time researching suggestibility. How likely is somebody to be influenced just by the way you talk to them? Just in the way that you change your tone, and the way that your body language is in conjunction with it. Like, this does all have impacts on how we not only perceive things, but how we end up reacting to things. This is why it is important to not be one of these people, and I've used to be a lot more guilty of this, but whether good or bad, just saying the first thing that comes to mind, not usually the best idea. Definitely recommended to soak in what's happening, because there are people out there that have the intent to do bad. If you know what you're looking for, it's easy to pick up on. Not everyone's out to get you. I hate that mentality that everyone's a fed. But it is nice to know. And very simple, very minuscule things can have far-reaching impact on us and the outcome of our days, our weeks. And it is incredibly important to know. But Jolly was the one that really focused on learning about this, establishing the knowledge that we now know today. So in this, he was also working on dissociative states. So he knows all too well, which means so did Singer, which means so did Elizabeth Loftus, so did Underwager, so did Lifton, so did all of these sick fucks. So they knew exactly what they were doing, and they chose to do it anyways. That's why this is a problem. That's why this has been such a problem. Because of their manipulation and their lie, and we are now, close to 30 years after this first came out, and the resulting fallout from this has been the silencing of millions of survivors. It has gotten to a point where some people won't even come out and talk about it or bring it up at all. This is the idea of false memory syndrome being brought to you as a survivor has got to be the most terrifying thing possible. This will be a perfect way to end on. Let's see. Oh, okay. So this is actually a perfect way to end this. I'm glad I thought about this. So the thing about abuse in this country and in the world, but particularly in this country, because I live here and that's what I'm going to focus on. We have gotten to a point in this country where we are so terrified of overreacting that we've practically chosen to give up reacting at all. It has become so much easier to just, it didn't happen. That guy, he's so nice. Like, do you see the way he treated that dog? Like, there's no way he abused you. Hey, that's not funny. You're going to ruin his reputation. You know, pick any of these. But the fact that I'm sure that any of us watching this, participating, can at least think of maybe 2 or 3, or maybe even 1. And the fact that all of us could do at least that is indicative of the type of culture we live in regarding child sexual abuse, ritual abuse, regardless of the belief system surrounding it, or any other type of organized abuse. It's incredibly eye-opening, which is why I chose the False Memory Syndrome Foundation to be my target. There have been many awesome people cover it before me. There will be plenty of people after me. I'm hoping I can just tell it in a unique way to wake more people up, because this story needs to keep being told over and over and over again until it is permanently changed. This is unacceptable. What kind of a world do we live in when we ignore suffering children? Now, here's a quote that I would kind of like to wrap this up on. It is very tempting to take the side of the perpetrator. All the perpetrator asks is that the bystander do nothing. He appeals to the universal desire to see, hear, and speak no evil. The victim, on the contrary, asks the bystander to share the burden of pain. The victim demands action, engagement, and remembering. You know, it's definitely not the fun or popular position to take. I, for one, don't give a shit. That's me. I understand why people do. And I won't inherently believe somebody to be a coward for not sticking up for this. But I would believe that to be true if they knew how bad this was and then chose to still do nothing. It doesn't matter exactly what you do. It's just that we have all got to not only be aware of this, but we as a society, as an entire nation, we have got to get this under control. Child trafficking, or human trafficking, child trafficking, whether it's labor or sex, which is usually the same thing, is the fastest, largest growing uh, industry in the entire world. And because we have some sort of weird, social qualm, we don't want to talk about it. So, because of that, it's able to just operate free. Like, it's a problem. It is a massive problem. And this is a lot more complicated than black and white. But what is simple is that false memory syndrome is not a condition. It never has been and it never will be. Anyone who uses the defense of false memory syndrome is either incredibly stupid and or doing it on purpose to try to protect their ass because they're probably guilty of something. The point is that it's time for us to have an honest conversation about what's actually happening. What is happening is children are continuing to get hurt. Those children grow into adults. And it's been going on forever with no signs of stopping. So the very fact of being able to talk about it even, and also call out the bullshit, that's further than we've been. I think this is a fight we are winning. We've got a lot of ways, we've got a lot more to go before this is accepted by the normies, I guess. The people who don't think about these things is what I'm trying to say. I don't know about you guys. I just want to live in a better world. And that's why I'm doing this. That's why I put so much time and effort and energy and money that I don't get back and everything, because I'm hoping I can bring you guys some entertainment, some fun, but we can also have some very serious conversations. And hopefully, every single one of us can take this experience and share it with somebody, or just take our own thing and, go talk to some coworkers or some family or whatever it may be. But having the conversation is what's important, getting the information out there, hopefully having fun while doing it. And on that note, I think we'll end it up here. But I would like to thank all of you so very much for tuning in to another episode of Rise to Liberty. It has definitely been a pleasure. I've had a lot of fun today. As you can tell, it is 2 hours and 10 minutes. Usually we try to cut it off a lot sooner than that. So, all right. Oh, and that's great to hear. That is great to hear. There's a lot of churches these days that won't even talk about Jesus in many aspects. So figure that out. But I mean, the very fact that any of you guys are here watching this, that even just that is leaps and bounds above some of the conversations I've had with people who deny that child abuse even exists at all. I genuinely had somebody tell me that the abuse is not an abuse because it doesn't hurt the child, and that they actually like it. And when they said that, I about threw up. I won't say who, but it actually wouldn't surprise you if you know who they were. But I do genuinely believe him. I believe that he genuinely believes it. So there are those people out there. It's just interesting, and we've got to do what we can against it. But until then, thank you once again for tuning in to Rise to Liberty. I will be streaming again on Thursday, probably around the same time, about 11:30 Mountain Time, which makes it 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Either way, there will be a stream on Thursday. Tuesdays, Thursdays, Sundays. Those are the 3 guaranteed streams. If there's ever like a earth-shattering news event and might do an emergency stream or whatever. But yeah, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Sundays are roundtable coffee. So bring a morning beverage, and we'll look at crazy things on the internet. Outside of that, everyone can go to risetoliberty.com/links. It's in the episode description. That will pull up my master link of everything I am, or of where I don't know. You know what I'm saying. It brings up my master link. Let's see. And other than that, I can't think of anything else. So, let's see here. Make sure I am out, that I don't have anything else. I mean, there's always more things to show. There's always more things to talk about. Oh yeah, there's tons of things I didn't even get to. That's okay. It's a next time thing. Because this is such a large topic or anything, if anyone has any questions, feel free to put it in the permanent video, and I will make sure to answer the questions next stream, once again on Thursday. And yep, I think we're out of here. So on that note, let's see. Awesome. Once again, thank you so much. Tuesdays, Thursdays, Sundays, all around the same time, you know, an hour or two here or there, depending on what's going on. You can find me on X, pretty much anywhere with my little TV guy, or any profile named Rise to Liberty. And well, until next time, stay free, my friends.